These readings are very expansive and just show us the drama of salvation. It's remarkable. We see the value of the person, the value of the human person, right? You are worth more than birds, right? Thanks be to God, okay? But the fact you say, if God loves the birds so much and he knows them, how much more are you worth? How much more does he love you? And that's why it's so tragic when the ones that he loves don't respond to him. Or even worse, they pretend to respond to him, right? Because the Lord would say, he would understand it if you were hot or cold. He understands that. But if you're lukewarm, I'll vomit you out of my mouth, the book of Revelation tells us. And yet, there have been people like that since the very beginning who don't take seriously what God's offering them, right? People who are atheists, if they're really honest intellectual atheists, at least they're being consistent, right? They're saying, I don't want to believe that, right? But the people who are kind of sitting on the fence and being like, yeah, I believe it, but I'm not going to really live it, it's like, that's crazy. Like, choose. Like, either live as a faithful Christian or live in the world, but don't like have the worst of both worlds, right? Saying you're Christian and yet wanting to live like the rest of the world. It's crazy. And yet that's the situation the Pharisees had, right? Is saying, okay, we're going to look righteous, but really I'm just going to be like everybody else inside. And that's why he rightly condemns Pharisaism. Pharisaism is often applied wrongly today, and people are called Pharisees for the wrong reason. But Pharisaism is hypocrisy. It's saying you believe something, but then doing something quite different, right? And that's what we need to be aware of, is that can creep into our lives very quickly, where I say I'm Catholic and I do the right things externally, but is my heart changed? Am I really with the Lord in my heart, or am I just doing things to fill out a list and check it off? That's very easy. It can happen if we're not careful. And so we have to really constantly give ourselves to the Lord, say, why am I doing this? Because the first reading, St. Paul tells us, Abraham was not justified by what he did, because he was justified before he was circumcised. And all these Jews and others who are following the covenant, who think that it's because I do all these things for God that God loves me, it's like, no, God chose Abraham and justified him first, right? And because he made him promises and Abraham believed him, even though he didn't see the result of the promise, it was because of his faith that he was justified. And then the works flowed from that place. And that's what the church believes, right? And so we recognize that none of us can claim, because I go to church, I deserve God's love. None of us can say, because I do works of charity, I deserve to go to heaven. The fact is, before you did anything for God, you were baptized, right? And a lot of you were baptized as children. Before you did anything for him, he chose you, and then because he united himself to you and gave you the gift of sanctification, now your works mean something. Now they actually can bear fruit. So we realize that it's the same situation. That's what our faith teaches us. And then we continue and we see very clearly what he says. There'll be nothing concealed, will not be revealed. So the things the Pharisees are hiding in their hearts, don't worry, that stuff's going to come out in the open. You think you can fool other people? You cannot fool God. And that's why we come and we apply it even today, and we recognize, look, what we're seeing happening in Rome, and they're like, oh, we're having this synod, we're having these nice conversations about the teaching of the church, but don't worry, we won't tell you what we're talking about, but it's nothing bad. Friends, whatever you have said behind closed doors will be proclaimed on the housetops. Isn't this amazing how God provides these readings right now? You see all the hypocrisy that's going on, and it's sickening. It's sickening. These people with weasel mouths who say one thing but really mean another. Oh, we're not talking about gay marriage. We're not talking about women priests. We're not talking about this other stuff. Oh, just believe us. Baloney. Baloney. They are politicians and frauds, and they'll be revealed for who they are. Not everyone, but there are wicked people in the synod. There are. And we just have to realize that the Lord is not worried about this, but he tells them very clearly, and if they're listening to this, which of course they aren't, because who cares about what I say? But listen to the mass that they're all hearing today. Hopefully they heard this word that says, I tell you, friends, do not be afraid of those who can kill the body, but afterwards can do nothing. We're trying to please the world. And we're afraid of all these people who can, make our lives miserable or uncomfortable politically. But friends, be afraid of only one who determines your eternal destiny. Only one. Right? And And in case you're cowering in fear of that one, it's like, look, if you love him, you have nothing to be afraid of because he loves you. That was the starting point, right? Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 small coins? Yet not one of them escapes God's notice, and you are worth more than many sparrows. That's the beautiful truth about this, friends, is that God's offering us something beautiful. There are those in the church who wish to corrupt it. There are those outside the church who wish to corrupt it. They may have their day, but they will not have eternity. You know what the truth is, friends. You know what it is. The church has been teaching it for 2,000 years. Don't be disturbed. Don't be frightened. Don't be worried. Don't lose your peace. It's always been that way. It's just never been so public and in our face all the time. But it's always been this way. There have always been those lurking in the shadows, and now they're emboldened to come out to the surface. But friends, the Lord is king. He rules, he reigns. So don't go along with the wicked. Remain with him. Remain with his church. Why are we complaining? Why are we whining? Why are we worried? Why are we afraid? Every hair of your head, even if there are not many of them, have been counted. So do not be afraid.